All right, welcome back to another episode of the Exchange Podcast. I have a great and very important episode. Rich Castaldo is joining me here, and he has just done something that, with everything that's been going on with COVID and the coronavirus epidemic, thought somebody would have done this a little bit quicker. I'm really happy that Rich did come up with this great idea. And me, myself, personally have been affected, along with everybody else, with the coronavirus pandemic. And he's here to tell us about his website, mycovidhelper.com, which is a great informative website, which I was telling you a little bit before we started recording, I really could have used this a couple of weeks ago. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself and about this project for mycovidhelper.com.
Sure. Well, it's good to be back with you, Kevin, and I'm glad you're feeling better because, it was concerning when people are getting sick around this time and everything that's going on. But that's really one of the reasons why I created this, because I was getting so many inquiries, because a lot of people know I'm very involved in the community. They know I'm very involved and doing a lot of activities with the community and all different levels. So they were calling me saying, hey, do you know where I could find a testing place? Do you know where we could find supplies? And my own sister called me because she needed to be tested, and she wound up testing positive for coronavirus. So after that had happened, I said, you know what? I've been thinking about doing this for a while, but I really have to, get it going. So I created this website. It's basically a hub where people who need information regarding where testing sites are, where they can get supplies. They put out requests. So if there's a hospital or a fire station or police department that needs some supplies, they can actually put up a post and say, hey, we're looking for gloves or masks or goggles or whatever it is. And then other people will go on there and say, hey, look, this police station needs something, or this firehouse needs something, or these first responders or these frontline nurses need something. I happen to have, a construction company, and I have, N95 masks. I want to donate them. So it gives them the ability to reach out to each other and contact each other, instead of just having to go out there and just kind of, not know where to find this stuff or how to contact people. It gives people a meeting place to connect.
And I went onto the website before we met up tonight, and I was messing around with it, and it's very simple and easy to use, which is great. It's got the map, so you could literally just go over your house and then just look for the closest place to you to find that the drive-through testing facility, which, if you, I was just driving past the Resort World Casino in Queens today on my way home, and there is tents set up there for testing. Obviously, they're still building more testing sites, more hospitals. I believe that we're hitting the top of the peak, but you never know. That you're hearing over back in Asia that there's numbers now, people going back to work, but then the numbers are coming back up. So it's a great resource to have. And a lot of times we become too dependent on the government to just provide all this information for us without regular people like yourself. You come up with this, and you are a person of your community. You're always involved in your community. You're always helping out, and this is another example of that. With the COVID helper, you're saying that people can meet on there and get supplies. So am I able to put up a request like, I need a box of gloves, I need a box of masks for my nonprofit organization where we're trying to do things with the community and we just don't have the equipment? And who do you exactly connect them with? Is it other business people? Is it nonprofits that are handing out goods? How does this all work?
Well, that's exactly what you would do. You would go on there and put up a request, because there's different categories. So you would choose the category. There's supplies needed, testing sites, food and beverage needed, food request, volunteer request. So if you were looking for a specific type of equipment, you would put up posts saying, we're in need of surgical masks, or we're in need of hand sanitizer, or we're in need of N95 mask, and we need 100 or 200. And someone who there's no limitation. It could be a private citizen, it could be a business person, it can be a corporation, it could be anyone who has this stuff. And 9 times out of 10 is going to be people who want to donate. I have had requests of people who have who actually are in this business and say, hey, look, we have stocks of it that we want to sell. And I've said, go ahead, put it up there. We want all the options available. So you'll get 9 times out of 10, and the majority of everything on the site will be people looking to just connect by putting up a request, or by someone putting up a post saying, I have this, we have this. And when you click on their link and their post, you'll actually have their contact information. And all the posts that go up there, we verify. So we try to make it as safe as possible, because we don't want anyone going on there and abusing the system in any way. So we take a lot of safety precautions. We make sure we check the IP addresses, and before any post goes up, it has to be approved by an admin. I have myself and 2 other people who administer this, and we make sure that it's not a post that has spam, or if it's some ridiculous request or something inappropriate. So we have good quality control with it. We filter out anything that shouldn't be on there, but most of the time you're getting people who are just putting up information, or they're putting up a request, or that they have some sort of service or supplies they can offer.
Are you hearing anything? Maybe you would have heard something about test kits, reliability with test kits. They're testing, or they're trying to get past test kits that way you could get a result within 5 minutes. I've seen like a blood test where you prick your finger, you put it into this little device, pick some solution, it'll give you a result within 5 minutes. Has anybody reached out to you, or is there a possibility that when it does become available that you'll be able to provide those resources, links to those resources, to have people get kits where they could find out results quicker?
Yeah, absolutely. I've had so many people reach out to me, especially since, that article came out on Insider. So what happens is, we'll have an inquiry from a business or a nonprofit or a company that's able to provide these services. And what we do is we put it through a process of really vetting them, because we don't want to just throw anything up on the site. We want to have very good quality control, especially since it's early. We have a couple hundred posts up there now, mostly where the testing sites are. But we know as this thing, even though the curve is going to go down, you're going to still have months of people needing equipment and testing and all sorts of stuff. So we have a really good quality control system in place to make sure that we're getting the good quality people who offer these services, such as new testing and sites and equipment. Now, when it comes to new technology with testing, I did speak with someone who is involved in testing. They have told me that they want to share some information. They're in New Jersey. They're testing for hospitals. Actually, what happened was they set up their own testing facility, because the hospitals were not able to test their workers, because they had to test the citizens first. So the person I spoke with basically said they had to set up, and they had to use this technology that they had, that they were given from medical resources. So I will look into that and see what type of technology they're using. Now, as far as the reliability with the test, no one can tell yet, because there's a lot of the waters are pretty muddy right now. But I would say always err on the side of caution. So if it comes back positive, and even if you think, oh, maybe it's a false positive, just act like it's positive for now, just so that in case it is, you don't affect no one else and you take care of yourself. But we definitely need to find new technology that gets this done really quick, because we can't have people running around waiting 2 weeks. My father-in-law waited 2 weeks for him to get a test. My sister waited a week before she got her results. She was already feeling better by the time she got her results.
This is America, right? This is the land where this should not be a problem, and there's a lot of things that come into play for that. And I don't want to politicize it too much on that aspect, only because, listen, this is new for everybody. This isn't going anywhere either. So this is a resource that we're going to need for a long time, because we still don't know what the after effects are having it, because this is brand new. We don't know how long it stays in your system, really, because we can't get people tested and get that result to see if your body has the antibody yet. That's not out to the market. So right now, we don't really know much. This is all, like, they change the rules, but daily. I was exposed to 6 of my coworkers, all at some point ended up testing positive for COVID-19. And they were sent home from work. And, I immediately quarantined myself, so I knew I was around people who were exposed. That's something that everybody that I've talked to has done, which is great. And this is about, like, if you know something may be wrong, stay home. It's something that, but to not know whether or not you're positive or not, like I sat for the first week, like, oh, what's going to happen?
It's ridiculous.
Get worse,
It's ridiculous.
Is this going to get worse? When does my fever kick in? When am I supposed? You don't know, and to not have the test available. So that's definitely something. And I think a lot of the FDA regulations and pretty much red tape keeps that process moving slow. We need to pick up on it. This is America. We shouldn't have that problem. Another part of the problem is the fact that 80% of our medical supplies are made in China. So now we have a pandemic that happens, and I'm always discussing with a lot of my guests who come on from the political side about the free market, and I love the free market. We've trade, I'm a fan of free trade personally. I'm not a big fan of tax, but now looking at a situation like this, I kind of say to myself, where do we draw the line? China having 80% of our medical supplies, where they could basically just shut down and not give us anything, then where do we have to do the Defense Production Act to make ventilators, to make masks? We shouldn't have to do that. You've discussed, I know, China in a lot of discussion yourself. Where do you think with China from going forward?
Well, China is, it's kind of funny that I say this, but the relationship with China is kind of like a Chinese finger trap. I mean, it's really hard to get away from them, and it's very difficult to just cut off a country that supplies so much of the manufacturing for our nation, and that's a problem that we need to deal with internally. Now, I've heard numbers up to 95%, 97% that critical medicines are made in China. I hope those numbers are wrong, but if they're right, we have a serious problem. I mean, we wouldn't outsource making our missiles, or we wouldn't outsource national security items such as military weaponry or top secret satellites or programs to China. So why would we? And the whole purpose of that and national security is to keep people safe and from, ultimately not dying in a war or being attacked. So why would we give them basically ultimate leverage on our citizens where they don't need a nuclear weapon? They don't need any weapon. They can just stop production and just say, you know what, we're just not going to give diabetes medication to 50 million people in your country for the next year. I mean, you're talking about a nuclear holocaust. And that's a problem here. And that's not a partisan issue. This needs to be an issue that both sides take seriously. And the problem I go back to is I believe there's too much money and influence in politics these days. It slowly just kept getting pulled further and further and further to the level where every single person is somehow getting paid from some other group that's connected to another country, whether it's, in the Middle East or China or Russia or somewhere. There's always some sort of influential money or person or lobbying going on with American politicians, which is why we're seeing that most of our manufacturing and most of our, drug production has moved over there. Not because America can't do it. It's because America is allowing politicians, I wouldn't say America because I know tons of people who feel the same way, but politicians are allowing legislation to pass that allows these companies to basically offshore everything. So I'm for free trade too. I think free trade is good because it opens up the market so that we can actually import stuff, export stuff. I mean, it's not just one way. The way it's been set up is one way because we don't really have that smart politicians. It's beginning to change because Trump has took a very hardline approach, but you have Democrats that feel the same way. You have Republicans that feel the same way. It needs to be fixed now because you cannot have a country like China, who we know ultimately wants world domination, and they're not really the best when it comes to their people. I mean, if they don't treat their people well, and we know they're one of the worst human rights violators in the world, unfortunately, that needs to change. And animal rights, I mean, these things need to change in China. how can we trust them with keeping our people healthy, because they depend on the medications, they depend on this, and then they own out debt too. I mean, it's just a double whammy. It needs to be changed. It needs to be fixed. This is not a partisan or political issue. This is a national security issue.
It's an American issue. It's an issue that affects every single person, regardless of party lines. And that's why, I will criticize Republicans and Democrats on both sides. Same, they both have their problems. They're both influenced by the crony capitalists. This is supposed to be a free market, but it's more of a crony capitalist society.
I say, Kev, I say that all the time. You are 100% on point and right. I say it all the time. I know, everybody's talking about socialism and fighting over socialism. I said, look, socialism is bad, obviously. Look at what it does to countries. But you know what's just as bad? Crony capitalism. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, you will have an oligarchical corporatocracy running the country, which means you have a select few people running the country, making all the decisions. And those people happen to be running the major corporations that own the supply chains. I mean, it's a recipe for to change. And
that is what the fuel for the socialism movement is. Because people associate capitalism and with look how bad it is for you. Look what it's doing to your lives. It's not supposed to be that way. A free market is completely different than the way the system is now. I mean, I would much rather have the ability to, rather than have the only option of Home Depot or Lowe's, big corporations that funnel money to, they can afford to pay their employees $15 an hour if they jack up to $15 an hour as a minimum wage. A small mom and pop hardware store cannot survive. And that's why you see in a lot of states like New York, California, those businesses don't exist. In the Midwest and a lot of the smaller states down in the South, you still get the mom and pop hardware shop, but those are starting to eradicate as well. Now with so crony capitalism fuels socialism. This gives fire to their movement. They say
it does. And I mean, you're hitting it right on the head. And I feel the same way. And I've been posting this, so we follow each other we've been friends for a while now, and I've been talking about crony capitalism, China, all these issues, becoming medical independent for a while, and a lot of times it's heard a lot by a lot of people, but I mean, it falls on deaf ears a lot because people don't associate it with something that needs to be fixed right away. But you're 100% right. Crony capitalism is the fuel for socialism, because it gives people who are hurt by the system, or people who maybe aren't the best, don't have the best entrepreneurial spirit. They're people who are probably better off doing things that are not going out and starting a business. They may be a fantastic worker or able to do other things, but they just don't want to start a business, or they're not. There's just different people.
It's a huge risk. It's a huge risk, a huge investment to start a business, and most people can't afford to do that. And when you're competing against those big corporations, it's like, why would I do that?
Exactly. So what happens is these people who are not, like I said, they're not looking to go out and risk everything and start a business, and they want to just get a stable job, can't survive off a lot of the jobs that are out there because the corporations and a lot of other things. And listen, I'm not anti-corporation, because corporations do a lot of good stuff, but you cannot have crony capitalism where we turn this government into a corporatocracy, and these people are pulling the strings for everything, and they're writing the legislation. These Congress people are not even writing legislation. These corporations are hiring firms that write legislation that's favorable to them, pass it off to the politician, and then that politician knows, hey, look, this is coming from a group that bundles hundreds of thousands of dollars for my reelection. I am not going to mess with it. I'm just going to vote for it, and that's it. Get out the way and keep them happy. So yes, crony capitalism definitely fuels socialism. Not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody is built to be an entrepreneur, and that's understandable, and that's okay.
Right.
And we need to, and I'm saying from an independent standpoint, from someone who's in the middle, who I'm very involved with the Republican Party, but just as an American first, you have to think about it this way. We need to work with everybody in the country. We cannot continue forward with just the pendulum swung all the way to one side, and then it comes back and swings all the way to the other side. Because you know what happens? The people in the middle get destroyed because both sides are fighting like hell over each other, and the people in the middle get left behind.
You know when the last time we had a balanced budget was? Democratic president, Bill Clinton, Republican House. They got a balanced budget. They didn't have to make everything Democrat, Republican party.
It shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be that way. It should be the way that it was, where they were able to get along and get things passed.
And the parties are changing. Parties are changing. I mean, one day you can be a Republican, and then the next day, what you believed in as a Republican is now shifting to the center or to the left. And you can one day be a Democrat, and that's shifting either further left or, in a different direction. So a lot of people aren't changing. A lot of independent kind of common sense voices are staying the same. The problem is the parties are shifting. I mean, it depends who backs them up. When you see an ultra billionaire come into one of the parties and they have an agenda, all of a sudden that party is fully behind that. And if you're not behind that, there's no room for you in the party. That's why, for me, being involved with the party is because I see the passion on certain people, and I'm out there and I'm doing, I want to be out there and help people and be involved. But the party switches so much. I talk to people all the time. It's like, you can't ever be 100% on board with everything that the party says. If you are, then you don't have a mind of your own.
Right. And that's something I preach all the time, because I don't believe that I have to 100% agree with everybody. I would rather not have a political party to have to be a part of in order to run for office or get elected. If I ever choose to do so, it's like I have to pick one side or the other side. Why?
Yeah.
But the problem is because it's so rigged for that purpose. It's rigged for the one party or the other party. You have to make a choice and see where you fit in at the time. I'm okay being 70% Republican, 70% Libertarian, whatever it is at the time. I could change, and that's okay. It changes with the times. As things change, I'm going to make different decisions. But I want to hit a point that you made, and I want to make sure that I drive this through. You were discussing medical supplies and how we would never trust China to make our weapons of war, our military ships, our tanks, our planes. Why would we trust another government to make those weapons that could be used against them? So why would we want to trust the Chinese government to make our medical supplies to keep us alive during a pandemic? So if I understood you correctly, you think that it's a possibility that we should focus on medical supplies being treated like Defense Department supplies, where a certain percentage of our medical supplies must be made in America? Would that be something that you were suggesting?
Yeah, I think I think we need to take medical supplies and medical equipment just as serious as we take national defense issues. And because, again, national defense is to defend the people and to ultimately protect them from harm. So it's the same thing, really. When someone creates all your medication, if they put a stop on it, those people are in danger. So one thing that I'm putting together, I have a consulting group that I've been doing some political stuff with, and we work with all different candidates and all different sides of the aisle. We're able to, if we connect with the candidate and we think we can do a good job, and obviously we feel as we can get behind the message, we'll work with them. So we have a whole team, and what I've been working on with them over the past couple of weeks is a proposal where we draft legislation where we're not allowed, or we prohibit the country as a whole, or any of the corporations, however we do it, we craft this legislation that no more than 30% of critical medications can be made outside of the country. And this should maybe it should expand to protective equipment, things that are that we're seeing right now in this pandemic that are very critical and crucial, such as sanitizers and gloves and masks and all sorts of items that are for protection. So this legislation that we're drafting, and I'm in the phase of editing it right now, will be sent to Democrat and Republican and independent politicians. And what it will state is that we want legislation on the books that says no more than 30% of our critical life-saving medications, such as diabetes medications, blood pressure medications, all different. There's so many different diseases, which is another thing we can probably have a conversation on about. America needs to get healthy fast. Okay, you talk about healthcare system. A healthcare system, I don't care how good it is or what country, if we're the greatest nation on earth, which I believe we are, if you have 60% of the or 70% of the population is obese, I mean, you're going to have diabetes, heart problems, all this. So back to, to wrap up the other legislation proposal, we're going to send this to Democrat and Republican Congress people, and we're going to ask for legislation to be created that no more than 30% could be created. Now, the reason I say no more than 30%, we want 70%, because looking at the numbers and doing the evaluations, we think it's more realistic that 70% can be created inside the country, and God forbid of a pandemic again, with 70% of these resources created here, we would be fine. I mean, right now it's about 5%, and we're it's not great, but I mean, we're finally getting everything we need. So if 70% was created here, I don't think we'd have a problem. And that 30% gives flexibility for some external competition, and also not to shun parts of the world where maybe they do come up with a breakthrough medicine, and we want to be able to have free trade and open trade with them as well.
And the 70%, I think, could pick up that extra 30%. God forbid, like a country like China said, yeah, we're not going to, we have our own problems and we're not sending you any supplies. We're going to just keep it. Okay, keep that 30%. We still got 70%. They could increase production at these factories and these facilities, and therefore pick up that slack. I think that's a realistic number. I like that number. And I also want, because a lot of people might say, oh, the government fails at running things. Yes, we're not talking about the government running the actual system, because if you look at the Defense Department, there's a private partnership with the government where private companies make our weapons. You know, the government doesn't actually build F-35 fighter jets. The private company does. Lockheed Martin or Boeing or whoever's creating whatever equipment, they're the ones that do it. It's a private partnership with government. And I think if, we would want to see that same sort of relationship with pharmaceutical companies, with companies that are making the N95 masks and et cetera. And I think that 70% number is a very realistic number. I want to touch with everything that's going on as this starts to settle down and they talk about reopening businesses. I mean, a lot of people are unemployed. The numbers are absolutely the largest ever within a week, 2-week time frame. 6 million people this week went unemployed again. How are we going to get back? And you as an entrepreneur, always involved with business, how do we as a nation get people back to work and slowly come out of this without recontaminating ourselves and getting ourselves into more trouble?
Well, it's very tricky because you don't want to open up too fast and then all of a sudden this whole thing just restarts again. But I think with social distancing, and I think with common sense policies where people can protect the elderly, protect those who are most vulnerable, people who have pre-existing conditions, people who are in ICU already. I think I personally believe, a lot of good and a lot of improvement is going to come from this experience. As bad as it has been, as harrowing as a situation it has been, and the loss of life, I feel for everyone out there, and I God bless everyone we lost. I think good things are going to come from this because we will be prepared for the future and we will mitigate it better. Opening up the country is a necessity, though, because we need people to get back to work. Because if you keep this economy shut down, especially in areas where they're not really affected as much, we're not going to be able to sustain having 25, 30, 40 million people unemployed. Those people are not going to be locked in their house with no money to feed their families and children. We need to get back. We need to open up again, but we have to do it the right way. I think the hot spots, like New York, where I'm at, and certain other places really need to take precaution. But, I was saying the other day, we also can't just turn a blind eye to what makes us American, which is our freedoms. You don't want to just hastily say, well, the economy is everything, we need to just open up, because we want to make sure people are safe. But if someone's going for a ride on their bike, someone has to go to a grocery store for milk, or someone's taking a jog, because we should want people to stay healthy and do these things during this pandemic. And they're following proper guidelines, like staying social distancing, wearing a face mask when they're around other people. They should not be harassed, or they should not be arrested or threatened with jail time. I think there needs to be a balance, because what's happening is you're seeing one side of the spectrum, which I got into it with a couple of people on Twitter. I don't usually fight with people, but these were hardcore, ultra right conservatives that were saying certain things that I didn't agree with. And you know me, I'll go, I've had back and forths with people on the right and the left. But when I hear certain people saying some ridiculous things like this is all a hoax, there's no such thing, it's fake, it's media fabrication. Listen, I don't doubt that the media is going to do whatever they can to spin this in whatever way they want. And we know that everyone has an agenda, whatever network it is, they have their agenda. But I know for a fact this is not a hoax. So the other side of the spectrum is that you can't say it's a hoax, and the other side is saying, okay, we need a total suspension of the Constitution here. I think there is a middle ground where we just start slowly opening up the country and make sure people use common sense and adhere to certain rules. I have no problem using hand sanitizer 10 times a day. I have no problem wearing a mask when I go into public for the next few months if I have to. And I have no problem staying 6 feet away from people. I don't want people on top of me. I mean, I don't know anyone who likes someone reaching over their shoulder when they're online at a store or supermarket or something. I mean, I don't. So I have no problem with stuff like that continuing.
And living in New York, that is like one of the hardest things, being in the city every day. It's like, I can't wait to get away from the city, and just get, and just relax. But it's very hard to do in the city. But I gotta be honest, I work in the city. I'm in the city every day. I've been impressed. I have not seen the heavy traffic. People, when you're given the information, that's the other thing. And that's how your website can help, is information. When people have the right information, they can make the right decisions for themselves. You don't need to be forced to stay home. If I know that if I go outside and I go to the supermarket and I start rubbing elbows with people and I may get sick, I'm going to not do that. I'm going to stay home. I'm going to go to the store at a time when it's not so busy. I'm going to keep my distance from people and pay attention to my environment, look around left and right, make sure I'm not risking getting contaminated. It's common sense. We don't need government to tell us common sense. We should know this. I want to touch on education with you while I have you. Today, because of this crisis, de Blasio closed the schools permanently for the rest of the year, which is, there's a lot of conflict between him and Governor Cuomo on, I guess, the announcement time. But let's be realistic. We knew this is coming. Other states have already done it, and I don't see, why not? We're not sending our kids back to school now. It is what it is. The Department of Education, a lot of money that gets involved with education. I know you're a big proponent of education. Where do we go coming into the next year? I mean, you have people that are not finishing their senior year, supposed to go to college. You have people that are, the system is is this a time that we could fix what's wrong with the education system? And I mean, think about now is the time for a revamp while things are we have the time to actually go over things. Where do we go with education?
I think the time for a revamp was about 50 years ago. But I don't know if right now is the right time, but I believe it's necessary that and when I say right now, I mean during the pandemic, but it is necessary that we start talking and discussing it and laying out the framework and the groundwork to change and upgrade our education system, because better educated children, adolescents, teenagers, college kids, adults will basically turn into a more productive society, a society that has more scientists and more researchers and people who can do a lot more of the necessary types of jobs that we need, and we don't have to outsource it to other countries. I've been working on a proposal and a manuscript I'm working on for a book that basically talks about upgrading our technology, that kids in elementary school should know how to at least code a website or build their own website or start understanding how electronics work, because our society has shifted. We're still teaching kids stuff which first of all, we need to put civics back into school so people understand how the country works and economics. Kids should start learning early how to balance checkbooks, how to save money. I mean, why don't we prepare kids for the actual things that they're going to need to do? We shouldn't be preparing kids for stuff that they're never going to use. Now, it's okay to have a vast variety of topics to study, and history and all sorts of stuff. But let's focus on the things that they're going to deal with when they start looking for a job, or when they become an adult, or when they graduate college, so that they have a firm understanding. If they want to go into law, they understand civics. If they want to go into technology, they've been coding since they're 10, 11, 12 years old. Let's start doing things where we upgrade our education system, so we're not falling behind in the world and relying on other countries to supply their technologically advanced students and people to our country. Let's be the world leaders again with that. Listen, the Industrial Revolution, we had people like Carnegie and Edison and Tesla and all these people who were here, Vanderbilt, that were just knocking down walls and innovating and doing unbelievable things. We were leading the world in electricity and gasolines and also in railroads and all sorts of stuff, in engineering. We need to get back to that. The world still has high demand for a lot of important things, and a lot of them come in the medical field now, fighting pandemics, having kids educated so that they understand what's happening here, having kids understand how to take apart an iPhone and how it works, and understand how email and websites work, and building apps. I mean, people can reach millions of people with building an app, building a website. And
another thing is, you're never too old. When I was out sick these last 2 weeks, I'm in the process of building a website myself, and I took a coding class on that Harvard edX website. It's a free class, just to start learning coding. It's something that can be done. Economics and civics, not being in high school, is absolutely ridiculous. And that was something that, I wish I knew more about economics when I got out of high school, went into the military, because I blew a ton of money that I wish I would have saved up and done the right thing and known what to do. And economics is key. And
I had one economics. I had home ec my senior year in high school, and all we did was watch videos of some that were probably produced in the 1960s. Yeah, I mean, we cannot. First of all, every student should be learning off of iPads and laptops. I mean, it's good to write once in a while, but I mean, every student should be prepared for the future. We're preparing kids for the past. Mm-hmm. We're preparing them for a society and a job market that doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. So, remember, people were put into these educational systems because there was, much more powerful people who wanted people to learn certain skills. So they had a workforce, but the world has changed. It's time to upgrade.
And what kills me is the college, how Bernie and everybody runs on this free college thing. Listen, college is expensive, but it's expensive because government has filled it with a bunch of subsidies and guarantees on these loans. Why am I getting a 4-year degree in something that's not going to help me? We should be learning things that are going to help move the country forward, not keep us in the past.
Yeah, and I think one thing that comes from that is a lot of people are working jobs that they're not happy with, they're not passionate about, so they're very depressed. And this is why you see a lot of these people give up on society, and it pushes them towards socialism. And because, again, crony capitalists in this country who have been able to run the gamut and do whatever they want with full protection and immunity have soured a lot of people. And it's our job to preserve the nation. It's you, me, anybody who's involved in speaking, to help preserve the nation, not just for one side, for everybody, and to have a compelling message to tell them, look, we understand what the problems are, but just because there's a problem, it doesn't mean we need to, jump out of the frying pan into the fire with something. We need to fix what's happening now. And I think we're going to see a lot more people be happy if there's more curriculums that teach them things that they're going to use. I mean, I'm happy, working remotely on my laptop, creating writing speeches, creating websites, developing apps, and writing books. This is my passion. I love to do it. So I'll never work a day in my life because I love to do what I'm doing. Imagine if the majority of people were like that. We'd have a much better society. We'd see a lot of things change, and it would also help. It would help us regain being the leader in the world with technology and education and advancement. It's very, very important for us to do that.
I want to end on this question. Do you think it's possible that we could throw politics out the window in a situation like this, like a pandemic, and actually, because when I was deployed and I'm with guys overseas, we don't give a shit about what the government has to say at that point. I mean, we're there. We just want to make sure that everybody gets home safe. That's our mission. That's our job. So now our job now as a society in a situation like this, like the president has said, this is a war against the virus here at home, the invisible virus. Do you think that we're able to come together as Americans? I guess, are you happy with what you've seen with cooperation between the city, the state, and the federal level of government, between three people that ideologically do not agree 90% of the time? Are you satisfied with what you've seen so far here in New York?
I have no faith in politicians, unfortunately. I have no faith in them. I don't think they'll ever put politics aside. Even during the pandemic, I'm seeing people on both sides use this to frame things in a certain way. I have no faith in politicians. I believe that politicians are too self-serving, and I believe the system that we have is the reason why, is because most of them are there to serve themselves and not serve the people. I mean, you have politicians who got inside information regarding what was going to happen with the coronavirus, and they're selling off stocks, while you have people who were working and had no idea this was going to turn their life upside down, that worked for the next 3 weeks, when 3 weeks prior you had senators on both sides of the aisle that were selling stocks and making, protecting millions of dollars, or moving it in and out and making money, while the guy who's working in a mechanic shop, or the woman who's teaching, or doctors or first responders or nurses, you're having these people just get blindsided by this pandemic, while U.S. senators who are supposed to be there to serve the people and to preserve our nation and the union and the people are making money off of it, or protecting their own personal interest. So listen, I'm evolving in a lot of ways. I think we need to defend our Constitution. I think we need to really put out a compelling message to let everyone understand what made this nation so great, and why we need to come together in a sense where we are moving forward together rather than apart. It sounds cliche, but it's not going to happen with politicians. It's going to happen with people who are inspiring, who are leaders, who are business people, who go out there and say, hey guys, look, we got to change this. We're not going to survive like this. We got to get America healthy. We got to get America safe. We got to become, not only energy independent, we got to become medicine independent. We have to do whatever it takes to get our education system revamped so that we become the leaders of the world again. And we need to make sure that we take care of our people first. Okay. If this country is having an amazing, amazing, amazing year, and corporations are making billions and trillions of dollars combined over the aggregate of a certain amount of years, there's no reason why the people cannot share with some of those benefits from this economy, because they're the ones lifting it up. So I'm open to discussing ways to take care of the people more. And we have to, as common sense individuals and people who just want to see the nation survive and continue to be the shining light of hope around the world, and make it even brighter and become the technology leaders, we have to make sure we go out there and send a compelling message. And that's what I'm focused on. I'm focused on just right down the middle. This is what we need to do for everybody. And I'm going to keep pushing like hell, because like I said, I have no faith in politicians to do it for us.
And that's why I think we get along so well. And I love having you come on the podcast, because you just hit it right on the head right there. Perfect. That's a perfect explanation. And I appreciate it, man. Tell everybody how they can follow you on social media. And I want to remind everybody again, the website is mycovidhelper.com. You go there, you get information on where to get tested. You get information about the virus, right? And if supplies, where we can get supplies, where you can help other people get supplies if there is a need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the website, mycovidhelper.com. You can follow me personally on Twitter. It's RN Castaldo. So it's at RN Castaldo. Same thing on Facebook, Rich Castaldo or official Rich Castaldo. Just search the name, it'll pop up, and I usually give you a follow back.
Awesome, man. Thank you. And I want to remind everybody that is listening to this, or if you're watching us on the YouTube channel, please give a thumbs up, give a like, subscribe to the podcast. And we're on all the podcast catchers, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, anything. Subscribe to us and give us a rating. The ratings help get us pushed up the chart, and we definitely appreciate it. And I want to thank you again, Rich, for coming on. Great job. This is the entrepreneurial spirit that comes out of a disaster like what we have. people could do it without government telling them what to do. You did a great job, and it's a great resource, and I appreciate it, and I hope it's very successful, and I hope people go to it.
Thank you, Kev. It's always a pleasure being with you. Thank you once again for your service, and glad to see you doing better, and hopefully we'll talk soon again.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. Subscribe to the show, like it, and comment. Also, if you want the audio version because you're traveling, you're in a car, and you can't watch it, you don't have time to watch the episodes, you could go in the show notes. There is a link provided. Stitcher, iTunes, iHeartRadio, whatever your pleasure may be. Join me and listen via the audio versions on those other platforms, okay? But I really like YouTube. I like the way it's working out. And if you can, subscribe. The more subscribers, the better the content I can provide you. And it costs you nothing. So I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next time.